Today, I want to discuss a very crucial topic that will undoubtedly push XRP to $20 or possibly higher, because the Federal Reserve will probably have to take action on it very soon. Having stated that, I wanted to quickly offer some quotes from Arthur Hayes regarding the Fed's upcoming covert QE and its implications for the markets. After playing this tape, I will give some more background information in a moment. How are those? For example, how are the metrics being received at the moment from the various central banks where you are monitoring the liquidity? Now, where are we? Have they been rising? What does it tell you? Therefore, I believe that Bitcoin clearly saw a spectacular spike from $70,000 to $110,000 after the Trump election. People were expecting all these wonderful things, you know. Additionally, I believe that a lot of this will happen, including the printing of money and other things. Additionally, I believe that expectations were not met by the rate at which credit was created, and for that reason, we had a decline from 110,000 to a low of roughly 76,000 throughout the last 2 weeks. At whatever time, I've been doing some analysis over the weekend and listening to other people, so I suppose it was the tweet earlier today. It's clear that the United States is the most significant indicator of credit creation in the world. I believe that Powell's tone has changed fundamentally, and everyone else sort of responds to what's going on in the United States. He was quite busy and antagonistic towards Trump before the most recent Fed board meeting. I am going to stay. I am self-sufficient. Inflation. It is going to be fought. Don't even bother to speak to me. A rate of interest. I work on my own, don't I? My goal is to address inflation. Trump, stop talking so loudly. Like I don't give a damn about your policy objectives. Then, the tone of this press conference has completely changed. First, these will slow down the rate of quantitative tightening, which means that fewer Treasury securities will be released. Their balance sheet, which raises some questions since, first, inflation is still higher than they had hoped. Core PC, the inflation targeting statistic, is in my opinion a fake metric. That's the one they examine. It's higher than 2%. In the United States, real GDP growth is spectacular. Unemployment is at all-time lows, and equities are at all-time highs, albeit perhaps 4 or 5% off the all-time high. Nevertheless, the balance sheet has increased by more than $320 since COVID. The idea was to aid the common American by reducing inflation by eliminating this credit from the system. At this press conference, however, you may look at the American economy in many kinds of ways and say, oh, I need to slow down the pace of removing the thing from the system that's caused all this harm to the average American. That's a little odd. He continued by saying that we believe that by purchasing $35 billion worth of Treasury securities each month in the near future, we might be able to offset our mortgage-backed security runoff, which is around $35 billion every month, correct? That's MBS QT, or U.S. Treasury quantitative easing, as you may know. You are now essentially using printed money to purchase Treasury securities. That is really beneficial for dollar liquidity. Then you have the background, which I didn't see. As a result, I was aware that the Treasuries had decreased from $25 billion to $5 billion. Subsequently, I believe that they were maintaining the $35 billion mortgage-backed securities. You went on to say that they will make up for that. Didn't see that portion. The House stated that we have not yet determined when, but he was hinting at this to let the market know what they intended to do. Almost like a trial balloon to gauge the response. We may taper QT to be flat, guys. The Federal Reserve's balance sheet will remain unchanged, but we will let $35 billion in mortgage-backed securities to fall off the balance sheet. However, that $35 billion is being used to shrink our balance sheet. We will use that money to purchase Treasury securities and maintain low yields in order to support Trump and Besson, which will greatly improve the state of the economy, correct? Therefore, this is something that many people, including me, truly missed. This is a crucial background since the U.S. economy will benefit from hundreds of billions, if not trillions of dollars in more liquidity, solely based on that stimulus. And since cryptocurrencies are heavily dependent on the world's monetary supply, that will be very beneficial for the cryptocurrency industry. Naturally, as XRP is the most popular alternative available to consumers, its price will increase as more money moves through the system and more people have available to invest in the cryptocurrency. And yes, XRP will also be in charge of facilitating cross-border payments, which, when you take tariffs into account, I believe are becoming more and more necessary globally. However, Trump is presently earning hundreds of billions of dollars from the tariffs, and since reciprocal tariffs went into effect, that figure will only increase. Although other nations are retaliating, the truth is that Trump is maintaining the tariffs, and will raise them further if his opponents do. Yes, this could lead to a halt in trade with some nations if it reaches a certain threshold, but if the U.S. is already experiencing a deficit with that nation, it would be best for them to halt trade until they can balance the trade and ensure that the U.S. is not harmed in any way. Nevertheless, based on the most recent job data reports we received, we can see that unemployment rates are currently increasing to 4.2%. Additionally, as was anticipated, China would be levying an additional 34% tariff on U.S. goods and services. We were all aware that they would react in some way. We simply were unsure about the precise moment. Since the Fed is currently practically obliged to provide stimulus, which would be beneficial for the U.S. economy in the long run, I wanted to dig a little more into this and what it will probably imply for the Fed. Now, based on what I'm about to show you guys, this is something that they are actually likely to do in the next months. As you can see, China reacted quite personally to Trump's tariffs. They have placed export restrictions on 7 different kinds of rare earth materials in addition to 34% taxes. China is aware of President Trump's reliance on rare earth metals. These include samarium, gadolinium, terbium, dysprosium, scandium, lutetium, and I'm not sure how to pronounce the last one. You can see them in the statement right here. However, since you can't get all of these rare earth minerals in the United States alone, these are all specifically aimed at the United States of America because they are necessary if they want to start producing and building their own solar panels, computer chips, and other things. Because all of these minerals are found in those 2 nations, this is the reason Trump is so keen to purchase Greenland in Canada. And as a result, the U.S. would be fully autonomous and self-sufficient. The United States can be self-sufficient, but unless Trump can work out a deal with China to help reduce the deficit, they will have to pay a hefty premium for all of these rare earth minerals. China, however, is not likely to concede. As you may know, the 2 nations are now involved in a trade war, and they will continue to target particular industries that they believe will be most negatively impacted. What does this mean now for the digital currency XRP? We now know, however, that this is something that is more likely to trigger stimuli sooner rather than later. In order to participate in these trade conflicts, Jerome Powell will need to concentrate on essentially devaluing the U.S. dollar and stimulating the U.S. economy to provide them with sufficient liquidity. Both China and the United States will be doing this, as they did last year. Indeed, this may eventually lead to a situation where the U.S. economy is considerably stronger, but it will undoubtedly cause some short-term inflation. When we look more closely at the jobs data, we can find that the U.S. economy added 228,000 jobs in March, more than the 137,000 that were predicted. The number of jobs being added is increasing significantly. Although the unemployment rate has been on the rise, we must also keep in mind that many of these jobs were held by people who were laid off from the federal government. Yes, it increased somewhat, but we're also creating a lot more employment that are adequate for the nation and are contributing to the development of America rather than its destruction. Unproductive government jobs with folks who can't even respond to emails and don't even show up for work. Yes, those folks. We don't require their labor. They are merely consuming resources without contributing anything. Therefore, it is not a bad thing to eliminate many government jobs and subsequently add more jobs in industries like manufacturing. The February employment figures were reduced down from 140 to 116,000, as you can see. The United States unemployment rate is still on the rise, and this trend is probably going to continue as the Department of Government Efficiency fires a large number of federal employees, and the shift in U.S. trade policy will also have an impact on specific industries. However, I believe that this is good for the United States in the long run. After truly analyzing